When I was 18, I spent a lot of time on internet forums. 4chan was one of my favorites. Sure, I'd always heard that the site was dangerous, filled with strange and perverse people, but I didn't care much. I had the curiosity of a teenager, and I liked feeling like I was part of something out of the ordinary. It wasn't the first time I'd heard that something horrible happened on the internet and that 4chan was involved, but up to that point, I saw it as just urban legends. I thought the worst I'd encounter would be some nasty joke or an unpleasant meme. But a few months back, while browsing one of the subforums, I found something different. Someone had posted a picture that immediately caught my attention. It was an image of an Asian girl in pajamas, in a completely empty white room with no furniture, no decorations, nothing. What struck me most was the way the girl looked disoriented, lost, as if she had no idea where she was or what she was doing there. The image was a bit blurry, but her face conveyed a palpable sadness. Other users, like me, became interested in the picture. Comments started flying. Who is she? Where is this? Is this real? At first, I thought it was just another elaborate prank, but something about the girl's expression made me keep looking. I couldn't just let it go. So, like many others in that subforum, I got involved in the investigation. We wanted to find out who the girl was and what had happened to her. As days went by, the investigation grew more intense. Every day, new images of the same girl appeared, always in that same white room, but from different angles. In every photo, she had that same empty expression, her gaze blank. Something was very wrong, but no one knew what. Everyone speculated, but there were no clear answers, until an anonymous user shared an encrypted link. He said we'd need a specific deep web program to access it, a software that let you navigate that dark, hidden part of the internet. I'd never been on the deep web. I was scared my computer might get infected with viruses, or worse, that something bad could happen to me. But my curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to know more about this girl. Who was she? Why was she there? The worst that could happen, I thought, was that I'd have to reset my computer. So, I downloaded the program and accessed the link. What I found left me speechless. It was a live broadcast from what appeared to be the same white room where the girl in the photos had been. And there she was, the Asian girl, in her pajamas, completely disoriented. But the most disturbing part wasn't just seeing her there. It was the more than 1,000 users connected, all watching the broadcast in real time. In the chat, people spoke without any shame. They laughed at her, made terrible comments. And I discovered something even more grotesque. Those who donated money had the opportunity to give her food. Not real food, of course. When someone donated, a plate on a table in the room would begin to fill with something that looked like dog food. The girl, desperate and hungry, would rush over to the plate and eat the little that dropped as she looked toward the cameras as if pleading. The latter in the chat gave me chills. It seemed like for them, the humiliation of this girl was pure entertainment. I froze in front of the screen, horrified by what I was seeing. I wanted to disconnect, but something stopped me. It was like a part of me needed to understand what was happening, even though I knew nothing good would come of it. I returned to 4chan to comment on what I'd seen. I thought maybe, with more eyes on it, someone might do something, but, as usual, the users just made jokes, threw out conspiracy theories, but no one seemed interested in helping. We were all immersed in this kind of macabre game, where finding out more about the girl had become a competition, and her suffering was just another part of the spectacle. Over the days, the situation began to affect me more than I expected. I felt one was following me every time I left the house. I kept looking over my shoulder, and though I knew it was probably paranoia, I couldn't shake the feeling. However, I kept logging on, checking the broadcast daily. The girl was still there, looking more and more emaciated, with that same empty expression. One night, something happened that I never thought I'd see. Someone in the chat made a donation. But it wasn't just any donation. It was an absurd amount. By my estimate, around 30,000. And along with the donation, that person wrote in the chat, "Kill her." I froze in front of the screen. I thought it was a joke, just one more. But then, I saw a man dressed entirely in black, in what looked like a security uniform, enter the room. The girl, seeing him, tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The man easily caught her, threw her to the ground, and, without a word, began to strangle her. It was quick, no screams, no show. Just the cold brutality of taking her life. The girl stopped moving, and the man took her body and carried it away. The chat exploded. Some users kept laughing, others demanded another girl. And, as if it were normal, a few minutes later, another young woman was brought into the room. This time, a brunette girl, who looked Latina. That was when I disconnected. I couldn't keep watching. My mind was in shock. I tried to do something. I called the police, reported the page on social media, but nothing happened. Eventually, the site disappeared as if it had never existed. Maybe they moved somewhere else. Maybe the nightmare continued in another dark corner of the internet. But I could no longer know. To this day, I think about what I saw. About that young girl. How they turned her into entertainment for others. The internet, that place where I spent so much time, had revealed its darkest face. And since then, I can never look at it the same way again. I never imagined something like this could happen to me. It was a quiet afternoon. My 5-year-old daughter was playing in the yard while I checked my social media like any other day. I logged into Instagram, scrolling mindlessly through photos of friends, cooking recipes, and memes. Then, suddenly, I saw something that chilled me to the bone. It was a photo of my daughter. The same picture I had posted months ago, of her playing on the beach in her blue swimsuit. She looked carefree, with that innocent smile that filled me with pride when I first shared it. But this time, it wasn't on my profile or my friend's feed. It was on a complete stranger's account. I couldn't help but panic. My heart started pounding so fast, I felt like I might faint. I immediately opened the account, desperate to understand what was happening. This wasn't just any account. It was filled with photos of little girls. Some seemed taken from their mothers' profiles, like mine, but others were far more disturbing. There were pictures of girls in strange poses, some with empty stares, as if they weren't really there. And the comments, my God, the comments. People. Men and women, not just men, were saying horrible things, calling them beautiful, in ways that made me sick. The first thing I did was make my Instagram account private. I deleted every photo of my daughter. And I didn't stop there. I went to Facebook and erased all the pictures I had posted of her, even the most innocent ones. I did the same on TikTok, even though it only had fun videos of us dancing and singing. I didn't want a single image of my daughter left on the internet. After doing all that, I went back to that Instagram account. I wanted to report it, but curiosity got the best of me. I started looking at other similar accounts in the recommendations section. And what I found horrified me. There were dozens, if not hundreds, of accounts dedicated to sharing photos of little girls. All with the same sick comments. Some of those accounts even had links to Telegram profiles. My hand trembled as I decided to click on one of those links. It took me to a Telegram group where they shared more images, this time not just public photos. There were private images, ones that must have been stolen. They were even offering special content to anyone willing to pay. The anguish was eating me alive. I left the app, and without a second thought, I called the police. The officer on the other end of the line listened to my story, but he didn't seem to share my urgency. He told me that, unfortunately, these cases were complicated. That most of these people were in other countries, using very sophisticated methods to hide their identities online. The sense of helplessness was overwhelming. I knew I was doing the right thing by reporting it, but at the same time, I felt like there was nothing they could do. I kept thinking about all those accounts, the hundreds of photos of little girls, the disgusting comments. How could there be so many people like that, hiding behind anonymous profiles, doing such horrible things? I felt guilty, stupid for sharing so many photos of my daughter online. But it was too late. All I could do now was protect her and learn from what had happened. Days passed, and I thought the worst was behind me. I had stopped sharing photos, my account was still private, and I wasn't going on Instagram as much as before. However, one day, while scrolling unintentionally, a new account popped up in my recommendations. Something inside me told me not to open it, but I did, and what I saw left me in shock. It was an account exclusively dedicated to my daughter. Every photo and video I had ever posted, every smile, every playtime moment, was there, gathered as if someone had been watching all along. A deep sense of terror filled me as I read the comments. Some were the same sick praises for my daughter, but one comment stood out immediately. It was from someone I knew. I couldn't believe it. There, amidst all that horror, was the profile of my daughter's teacher. The same man I saw every day when I dropped her off at school, who always smiled at me so warmly. He was leaving the same twisted comments. Just like the others, I was overwhelmed with a feeling of disgust and fear, but also with determination. I had to do something. I quickly took screenshots of the comments, of the profile, of everything. Without wasting a minute, I went back to the police, this time with proof in hand. They couldn't ignore me now. My daughter's teacher was a real danger, and he had to be stopped. The investigation started almost immediately. The police seized his computer, and what they found was worse than I had imagined. Hundreds of photos of children, not just of my daughter, but of other students from the school. The community was horrified. They couldn't believe that someone so respected, someone they all trusted, could have done something like that. In the end, the teacher was arrested and put behind bars. Knowing he was locked up gave me a sense of relief, but I couldn't stop wondering how many more like him were out there, hiding behind fake profile watching, commenting, sharing. The internet is a dark place, much darker than I ever imagined. After all of this, I made a final decision. I deleted all my social media. I wasn't willing to take any more risks. My daughter was the most important thing to me, and I wasn't going to let anyone else see her as an object on the internet. It might sound drastic, but I didn't care. I'd rather be cautious than go through that terror again. Now, every time I see other mothers posting pictures of their kids, my stomach turns. I want to warn them, to tell them to be careful. But the truth is, until something like this happens to you, you don't really understand the danger lurking in the shadows of the internet. I've always loved animals. Ever since I can remember, I've felt an immense sympathy for stray animals. If I saw a homeless dog or cat, I couldn't resist giving it a little pet or sharing whatever food I had on me. Even if it was just a broken cookie or a piece of bread, it felt natural to me. Sometimes, my friends would tease me about it, but I couldn't ignore them. There was something in those sad eyes that tore at my heart. About a year ago, I decided to do more than just give them a pat or a snack whenever I saw them. I started building little shelters, places where dogs and cats could find some warmth. I placed bowls of food there and made sure they were always filled. I wasn't making much money at the time, but I worked hard, and since I didn't have many expenses, I could afford to buy a few bags of food each week. It was my way of helping, and it made me feel good. One day, a friend told me about something they do in China. People install cameras at animal shelters and stream it live on the internet. People would donate money for food and care, and in return, they could watch the dogs and cats playing and eating on their screens. I thought it was a brilliant idea. I figured I could do something similar here, and with the donations, I could feed even more animals. So, I bought a camera, and with my neighbor's support, I set it up at one of the feeding stations I'd built. I started streaming, and soon enough, the neighborhood dogs and cats would come to eat, and people loved watching them. It didn't take long before the account went viral. People not only enjoyed watching the animals but also began donating generously. With the extra funds, I built more shelters around the city and added more cameras, so people could watch the animals in various spots. I became a local sensation, and although some neighbors complained about the cameras, most supported the project. No one stole anything. It seemed like everything was going perfectly. I was living my dream. Sometimes, I would watch the live streams with pride, feeling good about what I'd accomplished. Helping animals was all that mattered to me. But then, everything changed. One day, I received a private message on the streaming account. It was from an anonymous user who warned me that the animals were in danger and included a link saying it was something I needed to see urgently. At first, I thought it was spam or someone trying to scare me. But something about the message made me uneasy, so I decided to follow the link. I downloaded the program needed to access the deep web, and what I found there took my breath away. On that website was a group of people placing bounties on the lives of the animals I was feeding. It was like a twisted bounty hunting site. The dogs and cats that appeared most frequently on the streams, the ones who got the most donations, had the highest bounties on their heads. The challenge was for someone to catch and kill them, leaving their bodies at the feeding stations where the streams took place. I felt like my world was collapsing. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I alerted my followers to what was happening and explained that the animals were in real danger. Many offered to help, watching the cameras closely to make sure no one harmed the animals. I was touched by the support of so many people, but at the same time, it seemed to provoke more activity on that dark site. They took it as a challenge. The bounties on the animals rose. The cats and dogs that appeared in my streams now had rewards of thousands of dollars on their heads. I tried to stay calm and keep things as usual, but the danger felt all too real. Everything seemed fine until one day, during a live stream, the worst happened. One of my favorite cats, a chubby orange tabby I called Mr. Tangerine, was kidnapped in front of hundreds of viewers. A masked man appeared on the screen and snatched the cat while he was eating. People immediately raised the alarm, and some neighbors rushed to the site where Mr. Tangerine had been, but they couldn't find him. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought I might faint. I reviewed the stream and caught a brief glimpse of the kidnapper's face. Without wasting time, I went to the police. They already knew me because of my work with animals. They searched the nearby houses and streets, and after hours of looking, they found Mr. Tangerine. He was crying, locked in a box, hidden under a false floor in an abandoned house. His kidnapper was a young man, around 21, who confessed to visiting the dark web page and planned to kill the poor cat for a bounty of $5,000. The relief of saving Mr. Tangerine was mixed with horror at knowing people were willing to do such horrible things just for money. The police arrested the young man, and investigations revealed that many others were involved in that site. But despite everything, the page remained active, offering bounties on animals. I thought long and hard after that event. There was nothing I could do to stop the psychopaths lurking on the internet. Though I wanted to keep helping animals, I knew it was no longer safe. I decided to end the live streams, no matter how much people liked them. I removed the feeding stations from public places and relocated them to hidden spots, where only a few would know their locations. In the end, a good deed had brought terrible consequences. Despite it all, I continued to receive donations, but now I feed the animals in silence, far from social media. I no longer know who might be watching or what intentions they might have. There was a time in my youth when life felt meaningless, as if I were walking down a dead-end street. I was aimless, jobless, single, and had no purpose driving me forward. Each day felt like it was dissolving into a darker emptiness. Loneliness weighed heavily, and every attempt to escape it felt as pointless as shouting into the wind. So, I tried dating apps, thinking maybe I'd find someone to at least walk alongside me on this bleak path. But in that virtual world, human connection felt even more distant. Conversations fizzled out before they started, and when I met someone, everything was superficial. Expensive dinners, forced outings, and nothing that filled the emptiness. I felt lonelier than ever. So, I left those apps and found my way to forums, where others like me shared stories of despair, hoping to find some comfort in words. One day, a post caught my attention. The user claimed to live in the same city as I did. It was rare to find someone so close in these forums, filled with lost souls from all over the world. I sent him a private message, and that's how my story with Alejandro began. A nurse who, like me, seemed trapped in a maze of hopelessness. Alejandro had a dark, somber outlook on life, something that, while alarming, felt oddly familiar to me. Not long after, he shared a link to his blog. "It's a diary, something personal," he said. I clicked on it without much thought. The first thing that hit me was the disturbing design: blood, like splatters, red and black text, crosses, and skulls scattered across the page. As I read, I realized his pain was genuine. In one of his earliest posts, Alejandro described how, due to an accident at the hospital, he had been injected with a contaminated syringe. From that moment on, he felt his life was over. Alejandro's blog entries grew more and more chilling. His resentment toward humanity seeped through every word. He was a man consumed by thoughts of revenge. Despite all this, I didn't pull away. Something in his pain resonated with me, and I thought that, ultimately, he wasn't dangerous, just someone shattered by his circumstances. Until one day, he invited me to his house. Alejandro's house was in ruins. There was something terrifying about the place, as if it held old, dark secrets. When I entered, he gave me a twisted smile, one with not a hint of friendliness. Then, trusting me completely, he revealed his plan to bring suffering to everyone he believed deserved to pay. He showed me a bag full of syringes containing his infected blood and asked me to help him spread his revenge. My stomach turned. I was frozen, caught between my own despair and fear. We walked toward the hospital in silence, him thanking me for standing by his side. When we reached the entrance, I finally mustered the courage to tell him this was insane. His eyes filled with tears, and before I knew it, he started shouting and threatening everyone nearby, one of those syringes in his hand. In the chaos that erupted, I ran. Alejandro disappeared that night, leaving the bag of syringes behind. The police never managed to find him. A few days later, I checked his blog one last time. Alejandro had left a final entry, claiming he'd found others like him on the deep web, people willing to carry out his dark vision of justice. Since then, his shadow has followed me. Even though I've moved past my own depression, I sometimes feel compelled to search for him, to wander into those dark corners of the internet, hoping to find him, or maybe just to understand the abyss I once found myself drawn toward.